red light districts of Mumbai. And so I'm super excited about that. And we also have a jam-packed program for you. So find out more about what we're doing at afr.net. That's where you can listen to the podcast. You can also go to urbanfamilytalk.com and check out our Marriage and Family Conference, which is coming up in June of this year, the end of the month. It will be in Tupelo again at that beautiful church where we had it last year, the inaugural one. And it's going to be so exciting to hear the speakers and to see exactly what the program is going to be. It's being developed right now as we speak. And you can find out more about it at urbanfamilytalk.com. So right now, what do we have on the show today? Who's joining us? Well, we are actually going to be chatting with, as I mentioned, David Harms, and we're also going to be talking about, you must have seen this kind of crazy, it's like as soon as the Senate Judiciary Panel says that they found no collusion on behalf of the president back when he was campaigning and beginning his presidency, then you have, just like whack-a-mole, you have one of the members of the deep state pop up out of, nowhere, come out of a hidey hole, wherever he was, Andrew McCabe, and he's coming out to say, well, the reason why there was an investigation to begin with is because after one meeting with Donald Trump, I was just convinced that he's just a terrible man. He's horrible. He's just man. He stinks. He's a super stinky, awful, mean man. And so I'd seen pictures and images of Andrew McCabe before, but in this interview that he did on 60 Minutes, and they've just given a little preview and they're teasing it, and everybody over there is just so giddy with anticipation of listening to him run down the president of the United States. A bunch of traitors. That's what they are. A bunch of people who want to see the president of the United States fail and crash and burn so our entire economy can tank and everyone around the world can look and say, oh, look at the Americans. They're not getting their whole constitutional representative republic right. Look at them. They'd rather have that than admit that the Republican president is actually doing some pretty great things on behalf of Americans, and that we should all be grateful that we have the opportunity to be ruled by despots on the left and despots on the right. And I'm only characterizing it that way because that's literally how Democrats see Republicans. And yeah, we kind of see them that way too. Yeah. So in a politically divided arena such as this one, where no one is friends with anyone on the other side, everyone on the other side is the enemy, the absolute detriment of this entire country, the reason why everything stinks, then yeah, I guess we want to see the president crash and burn. We want to see him impeached. We want to see the economy tank. We want to see any kind of progress that we can make on issues that are really, really important to Americans, like figuring out why it is that we can have criminals in South America trafficking drugs into our country and becoming billionaires while our kids are dying in the streets. And what's more important is the president must be some puppet of the Russians. Do you see the inequity there? It's just crazy that this is where we are. So there's also the issue of anti-Semitism. We're going to touch on that as well. And I know Jake Tapper is really fond of anytime you point out the current anti-Semitism that's being spewed from the newly elected, wearers of white, handmaidens, aunts, I guess, on the left. All of those congresswomen, so many of them have problems with Jewish people. And when you point that out, he always says, well, there's anti-Semitism on the fringe right too. I mean, so what does that have to do with what we're talking about here, which is Omar, this woman, she just can't stop saying anti-Semitic things. I mean, it's almost as if she really feels that way. So we got Tiny Man McCabe out parroting the worst kinds of falsehoods, trying to justify the fact that he's afraid of Donald Trump. The minute he met him and Donald Trump shook his hand and grabbed him and pulled him in really hard, and he realized that this wasn't someone he could push around. It's not a person who's impressed by academics. It's not a person who's impressed by someone who has a librarian's voice. You couldn't intimidate him by simply being in the position that he held at the time. That rattled him. And also, let's face it, no other point that I can remember, I don't claim to be a historian, but I've read quite a bit. I don't remember any president ever or presidential candidate telling their opponent that they might be in jail. And that is exactly what President Trump did in that viral moment during the debate here in St. Louis at Washington University. And that was something that they were really concerned about because they knew they'd done wrong things. Now, if you know you've done wrong, you're going to be much more susceptible to trying to clean up after yourself than if you've been operating in the black. If you're just rolling with it and you haven't done anything wrong, then you're probably not going to be as concerned if someone says, yeah, if I was the president, you'd be locked up. And if you haven't done anything wrong, you're like, yeah, that's what you think. I wouldn't be locked up. I haven't done anything wrong. But that's not the way Hillary Clinton felt. That's not the way her cronies at the FBI felt and the DOJ. That's not the way the Obama administration felt. And they're above the law. And all of us with our eyeballs screwed in tightly, we can see that that's not going to happen. But that's not the way they felt because they're guilty. So, before I get too far into this, because we're going to get into the fact that President Trump has actually started work on the wall. And we've covered this before, but I was really interested to see that it's kind of news to other Americans that the president has already begun to build a wall. And what I mean by build is add on to existing wall structures. And he's been building the new prototype, one of the new prototypes that's concrete and steel. And the Democrats are so upset about that because it's smart wall and it actually prevents, it's much more effective at preventing illegal entry than the bollard and the steel slat and all of that. So first, before we turn to that topic, I want to get into our daily confession, Jeremiah 7:23. But this thing commanded I them, saying, obey my voice, and I will be your God, and you will be my people, and walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, that it may be well unto you. So oftentimes we get to a place where we're crying out to God, oh, I need this. You're stuck in the ditch, whatever's going on. You're having a problem and you want God to answer. But sometimes the ditch we find ourselves in is directly correlative to the amount of disobedience we've been operating in. And it can be tough. Now, it doesn't mean God's not going to answer our prayers. He exists to answer our cries. He is responsive to us and he cares deeply for the things that hurt us and harm us. Every concern that we have. But today I want to point out that we have a responsibility to be obedient because it helps us to avoid the ditch. So in the Bible, a verse that goes with a cross-reference verse for this Jeremiah 7:23. Well, first let's get into the verse before and after it. I want to kind of make it a whole, it's the whole verse. So 22 says, for when I brought your fathers out of the land of Egypt, I did not merely command them about burnt offerings and sacrifices, but this is what I commanded them. Obey me and I will be your God, and you will be my people. You must walk in all the ways I have commanded you so that it may go well with you. Yet they did not listen or pay attention, but they followed the stubborn inclinations of their own evil hearts. They went backward and not forward. So Exodus 15:26 reiterates that. If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes and pay attention to his commands and keep all of his statutes, then I will not bring on you any of the diseases I inflicted on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. So again, stressing the need for us to be obedient and not raise up idols to take the place of our true worship and source, which is God the Father. All of these things he says to us over and over and over again in Exodus 19:5. Now, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you will be my treasured possession out of all the nations, for the whole earth is mine. God is clear. He wants us to obey him. And we have, in other words, the onus is on us. We have to be willing to admit, hey, I'm not in obedience in this area. That's the first step. Because sometimes we're like, Lord, please help me out of this. I'm overwrought. I'm burnt out. I can't take this anymore. First thing we have to do is acknowledge, you know what, Lord? I'm burnt out. I'm overwrought. I can't take this anymore because this is sin. I got to get out of this, and I need your help to get out of it. And he is faithful and able and just to do that for us. And as Christians, when we do that, we open up the door for not only restoration, healing, getting helped out of the ditch, as it were, but also to be able to share with other people who we might see them in a similar situation, to encourage them, hey, we have to be obedient, and God is always faithful and just to answer our cries, but we have to be obedient, and to encourage each other in that way, because obedience it's not the easy road. Otherwise, everybody would be obedient, right? Everybody would just be doing it if it was super easy. That's why the Bible says that the path is narrow. Narrow is the gate that gets us into eternal life with our Father in heaven. Wide is the path to destruction because it's easier to be disobedient. Now, the ramifications of that are, life isn't as good. It's not as full when we're disobedient. But it is easier because we don't have to discipline ourselves. So I encourage you. The verse again is Jeremiah 7:23, and I actually read 7:23 or 22, 23, and 24. It's a great one to meditate on and to ask God, hey, where am I on this? What do I have going on that is not obedient to you? And let him show you what that is, and then, get to work on it. So let's talk about the current issue. It seems like it's all anyone's talking about, and I can see why. The reason that it's all people are talking about is because we have this amazing opportunity to fund more border security and more safety for Americans, less drugs, less crime, less MS-13, or we can kick the can down the road and keep on operating as is and let more Americans die to DUIs, MS-13 drug, gang violence, shootings, machete beheadings, and rapes, assaults, violent robberies, kidnappings, and of course, DUIs. So those are the two options that we have. And the president is acutely aware of this. And I know it's not something that we're going to want to hear, but it turns out there are some good reasons for him to go ahead and go with it if some of the things that we're reading are true. And we'll get into that as well. But right now I want to hear him in his own words. He talks about how unhappy he is with the deal that's being proposed. It's number one.
I don't think you're going to see a shutdown. I wouldn't want to go to it now. If you did have it, it's a Democrat's fault. And I accepted the first one, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished because people learned during that shutdown all about the problems coming in from the southern border. I've always accepted it. But this one, I would never accept if it happens, but I don't think it's going to happen. But this would be totally on the Democrats. Okay?
So, Mr. President, are you saying that you may amend and send back the proposed compromise, or that you may grudgingly accept it and then move forward with
the executive action? It's always nice to negotiate a little bit, right? So, whatever you get. But I would hope that there won't be a shutdown. I am extremely unhappy with what the Democrats have given us. It's sad. It's sad. They're doing the country no favor. They are hurting our country very badly. But we certainly don't want to see a shutdown. But you'll be hearing fairly soon. The bottom line is on the wall. We're building the wall, and we're using other methods other than this. And in addition to this, we have a lot of things going. We have a lot of money in this country, and we're using some of that money, a small percentage of that money, to build the wall, which we desperately need.
So he mentions that the wall is already being built, and it's true. They've launched into some of that, and they're using funds that were allocated for that last year, so it is something he can take credit for. But there's so much other money out there, and we're going to talk about the sources of some of that money that the president can tap because he's the president of the United States and the money's already allocated. So we'll get into that and more. Up next, we're going to have David Harms from India Partners. Stay right there.
Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. On our Spiritual Heritage Tour of Washington, D.C., we go to the Supreme Court. That's one of the places we go on day one, and we visit the inside chambers. We go to where the justices sit, and it's an amazing place to visit, the Supreme Court of the United States. We don't just look at the outside, we go to the inside and see where the justices sit and where oral arguments are heard. So that's just one of the places we visit on one of the days. We're in Washington, D.C., and we also go to Mount Vernon the home of George and Martha Washington. So we're going in September. June's full. September will be filling up soon. If you want more information on this Spiritual Heritage Tour, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. There's an old gospel song I've grown to love. In fact, God often uses this song to motivate me to keep moving and to not quit. The song goes, I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. You know, there are many reasons to quit, to get discouraged, or to just coast through the passion and zeal phase. We get frustrated. We get upset. We have unfulfilled dreams, passions, and vision. People let us down. There are prayers we've prayed that God seemed to put on hold, and we get overwhelmed and we feel like quitting. I've met too many people who haven't necessarily quit in the Christian life, but they've certainly cranked it down. They're built to go 120 miles per hour, but they're just cruising at 45 or 50. You know what I mean. Periodically, in my own walk with Christ, I have to go back and revisit my high calling. Life is too short. The mission is too great for us to shrink back. I love what the Apostle Paul says in his farewell address to the elders of the church at Ephesus in Acts chapter 20 and verses 19 through 21. He says, serving the Lord with all humility and with tears and with trials that happened to me through the plots of the Jews, how I did not shrink from declaring to you anything that was profitable and teaching you in public and from house to house, testifying both to Jews and to Greeks of repentance toward God and of faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. Here's what I want you to remember today. The death of our Savior is worthy of all that we have. Let's give him our best. Don't shrink back.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being here today. I am so pleased to welcome our next guest to the program. I'm not sure if he's with us. Okay. So hopefully our next guest is with us. It's my pleasure to welcome David Harms from India Partners. Thank you so much for joining the show today. Okay, maybe not. So once we figure out what's going on with the guest, he will be with us. But until then, I want to get to a little bit of the India Partners audio where we hear directly from the children who are most impacted by what's going on with the wonderful work that India Partners is doing by providing them with days of safety, homes where they can be safe away from everything that's going on. So let's listen to India Partners Cut 3051.
मैं जब छोटी सी 3 साल की मैं कोलकाता में रहती थी मेरे पापा के साथ.
The work my mother does, I do not like. But since my dad left us, he or she has to earn money, somehow. I used to get so mad at what was happening to my mom that I would bang on the door and plead with her to stop. But the person in charge grabbed me and took me back to my room. I could never understand why this was the only job my mother could do. There are other things. Why this job? The worst day was when these men got mad and started throwing stones at us. I didn't get hurt because my mom gathered me in her arms and protected me. But that was when my mom knew I had to get out. My mom talked to the social worker and I was brought here. I was glad to be away from that place, but my mom still hasn't left. Here, I have learned to pray to Jesus. When I do, I feel a peace I can't explain. Growing up, we had many gods, but now I know Jesus is the only way.
Wow. So those are the words of a small child who has come to know the saving grace of Jesus Christ and to be really touched by this ministry that has it's like a haven of safety. It's like a little cocoon where kids who are experiencing things that we don't even, it doesn't even come into our thought pattern that this would be something that kids would be experiencing, but they're able to escape that by going to these safe homes and being able to just, it's just an amazing ministry. I know we're scheduled for a guest from there today, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I think we can go to our next, I guess we'll go to our next topic. We have Representative Krishnamurthy, who's a Democrat, talking about using El Chapo's money to pay for the border security deal. And he says, why not? And I thought this was such a logical response from him on what could happen, specifically because most Democrats are saying there is no money for the wall. There's no reason to use money for the wall. There's no reason to even discuss it. We don't need a border increase in wall building. We don't need any of that stuff. It's a manufactured crisis. It's just the president trying to honor things that he said on the campaign trail. And I get that that's the tack that they want to take, but I'm not sure if he was caught off guard or if he really genuinely felt this way. But here he is. It's number 2. Okay, we're having some live radio here. I have no idea what's going on. So to kind of talk about what he said, he was asked on CNN about the El Chapo Act by Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz has the El Chapo Act, and we've gone on over it on the program. If you're just tuning in, it's actually a really smart idea. El Chapo has had $14 billion in funds seized by the U.S. government, and they did that because the funds were gotten through illegal activities, so criminal enterprise. So the U.S. government has seized those funds, and now that he's been convicted and he's going away to a supermax prison for the rest of his natural life, the question is what to do with that money. That money would then be taken, according to the El Chapo Act, which is a bill that is written by Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. That money would be taken and used for building the wall and other border enforcement activities. So it would literally be the money that ill-gotten gains, money that El Chapo made doing illegal activities and harming Americans, and he used the open southern border to do that. That money that he got from that enterprise would be turned around and used to seal up the border. And $14 million plus the other allocations that have already been made, if it really turns out to be just $1.5 million, not $1 million, $14 billion, it would go a long way towards getting to that $26 billion that the president has requested. So we've already had, I think, $3 billion in total that has been allocated by Congress. And then there's other money, like $800 million here, a few million there, that have been allocated as well. Money that's been moved around or used by the president to get the work done. And what the president has been able to do is move those funds around, get work done. But if you take all of that money, so that's maybe close to $4 billion, and you add the 14 to it, that's 18. That's so close. Like, that's so much closer than 5.7 or 1.5. That's really, it's an amazing way to kind of even teaches a lesson to the criminals out there that this is what's happened. You made money off of Americans, and now we've seized your money. We've put you in an American prison, and we're going to take that money. We're going to use it to fix the problem so others like you can't do the same thing to American citizens. So I'm going to open up the call lines, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. You can call in and talk about anything we've discussed so far. I wanted to also go into a couple of other subjects. Now, one of the things that has happened is, of course, some people have come out and said they're opposed. One of the major radio people in the country has come out and said, look, you know, it's like beating a dead horse. Take this and then use the emergency declaration. We know the emergency declaration will be tied up in Congress, and it will be, actually not Congress, the courts. They'll take it to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit will put a national injunction on the national emergency, and then the Supreme Court will have to decide, well, do we wade into this or do we not? And that'll be something that is really, it's not able to be taken care of. But Okay, so now we have our guest. Perfect. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome David Harms from India Partners. David, thanks for joining the show today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
So tell us about India Partners.
Well, India Partners is a ministry that operates obviously in India, and one of our major outreaches is in Mumbai, India, which is home to some of the largest red light districts in the world. There are girls as young as 8 that are trafficked into these red light areas where they might be forced to serve 18 to 20 customers a day. And so with India Partners, we saw that as so tragic and so horrendous that years ago we started 2 things. One is community centers inside the red light districts. So we set up shop inside the red light districts as a way to befriend women, show them a better way, and then for those that are trapped that come out, we have safe houses that they go to where every need is taken care of, and that's where some of the real restorative work can happen in the name of Jesus. And so that's in a nutshell what we do. And our campaign here with you and everybody on an American Family Radio is to provide the days of safety in those safe houses, which includes everything that they would need. It's the food, it's the shelter, it's the private Christian school, it would be health care, it would be trauma counseling, and, of course, all that in the name of Jesus and Bible studies and all the rest. So for $7.08, people can jump in and provide those to the girls in the safe houses, and we're just excited to be able to offer that. And we have a phone number people can call to give, which they've been doing, and that number is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, and then AFR.net. Casey, I don't know if you know this, but so far in this whole campaign, 954 people have made gifts. So we're approaching 1,000 people that are stepping up and saying, no, we got to do something to rescue these girls.
I think it's fantastic. I love the listening audience here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Very responsive, people who truly believe in putting their money where their heart is and obeying the call when we have partnerships, especially for something like this where we're talking about innocent children. And and so it's when we listen to the audio clips that you guys have provided to us of the children speaking in their own voices about what's happened to them and what they've experienced, it's heartbreaking. It's hard for us to imagine it because we do have a lot of societal ills that go on here in America, but generally speaking, this is a place where we have less of that than, say, a country like India. And so it's interesting. You hear it and it just kind of pierces your heart. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like the change you see in the kids from where you find them in the red light district and then after they've been in the safe place for a while? And I imagine they change and they're happier because they're safe.
Yeah, very much so. I would say a word that I've learned in reality is the word joy. We use that, of course, when we have this inside sense of God's presence and we respond in joy. But I'll tell you, and I've experienced that, but nothing like these girls. I think it's because of where they've come from. When they come into the safe house, they're typically, emotionally, they're very, very damaged. They've seen things, they've had things done to them that no child should either have seen or have had happen to. So when you start from that point of brokenness, as all of a sudden they rest, they can relax, they have their basic needs, it's a beautiful home that they live in, then all of a sudden as we do devotions every day, as they are talking to our staff, our counselors, our house parents, as they get to understand more of what Jesus has done for them, but really, in my opinion, is the only way you can provide any sense of healing from what they've experienced is because of what Jesus can do for them. So that's what happens, and you see them go from this very quiet, reserved, scared young girl, and they can come in at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and as they, mature, as they get to be in their teens, then all of a sudden you see mature young women growing up in confidence in the Lord. And so that's why I mean, obviously I've seen it, I've experienced the safe house and been there many times, But of course, you'd have to see it to really understand it. But we're very, very thankful for everybody who, without even seeing it, has said, look, we want to be part of it. And so when you call that number, when you go online, we're just so thankful for what you can provide. A lot of people are doing $100, which is about 2 weeks that you kind of underwrite in the Safe House. A lot of people are doing a month of $212. We even had a couple people earlier today just say, I want to take care of an entire, year for one child and underwrite everything that they would need. And that's a $2,560 gift. So a lot of different people doing lots of different things, but we're just grateful for every phone call because we just want to get these girls out of the red light district and safe in the safe houses.
So I want to give the number again. We're talking to David Harms of India Partners, and we're asking you to provide 1 day of safety for $7.08, or as he just mentioned, you can, pony up. $2,560 does a whole year of safety for a child. $212 does a month. And I liken it to your cup of fancy coffee and a muffin, or, a slice of pumpkin loaf and straight black coffee from Starbucks. I guess you can tell where my teenage daughter, she drags me there, and I want to be with her, so I do whatever she asks me to do. And so we drink the coffee from the Starbucks when she's in town. And so there's that, or you can look at it as $212 might be, if you're like me, that might be that new pair of cowgirl boots you've had your eye on. You might just put those off to another month. $212 is also, it's, 2 fancy dinners out, or 2 dinners out for a family of 5 on a Sunday afternoon where you're going to brunch. I mean, we can equate this to a ton of different things, but the more we talk about what it equates to us, the more we see how blessed we are in comparison to these girls who they're literally, they're children being plucked out of the worst situations and placed into really what we take for granted, a warm home that's safe, that's cool, and cool when it needs to be cool, warm when it needs to be warm, food, a bed to sleep in, someplace soft, but mainly just all of the safety that we're talking about here. I want to give the number again, 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net. I have a question for you that I actually had a friend ask me. She saw the live stream on Facebook, and she said, I saw you talking about something called India Partners. She was asking me, and I didn't actually know, how you ended up in India to realize that there was a problem that we could help with. How did that all start?
Yeah. Well, it got started over 40 years ago when a college student was on a summer break on a short-term mission project with his church and had never been to India before, and went and just saw the need. And it was like God just said, this is your place. This is where I want you to engage because of what you see. I mean, when you see young girls wandering through these areas of a slum, basically, and your heart breaks because you know what's happening, and you know the violence that they experience. You know that the owners are not in any way, shape, or form thinking of their well-being. They are a commodity. I've heard them call themselves, I was a commodity. I was to be bought and sold. And they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And so when you see that, as our founder did, his name is Brett, there's no way you cannot do something. And so that's what started it. And so that's why we're excited here decades later to be able to come to you and say, look, this is a proven way to get girls out of the red light district, and as they understand who they are in Christ, we can find healing and restoration for these girls. It's a pretty incredible thing. So thanks for everybody who's calling that number, which is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, afr.net. By the way, 10 people have already jumped in just since we started talking, so thank you for those gifts, and just thank you for being open to what God would do to bring healing.
Thank you so much for coming on today, David.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman is one of the most accomplished passers ever to play the game. But Aikman believes he never got to show what he was really made of. His halfback, Emmitt Smith, holds the record for most career rushing yards. He's widely considered the greatest of all time. That meant that the Cowboys' offense was balanced and didn't have to rely solely on their quarterback like the Dolphins relied on Dan Marino or the Packers relied on Brett Favre. But Aikman was humble enough to play to the best of his ability on every snap, even when he wasn't the one getting the glory. Sometimes, uncommon teamwork means helping others to shine brighter than yourself.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today, and you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers, weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. America's unconstitutional practice of declaring babies born to citizens of foreign countries has become a magnet for lawbreakers. A group of so-called travel agents operating in California has been busted for advertising and selling Chinese women trips to the United States to give birth to their children so they can be American citizens. It's called birth tourism, and 19 people have just been charged in 3 different schemes originating out of Southern California. In recently unsealed indictments, the Justice Department alleges the defendants coached Chinese customers on how to pass U.S. consulate interviews by claiming their stays would last no longer than 2 weeks, and suggesting that they wear loose clothing to conceal their pregnancies. This is yet another example of how indecent our current immigration laws are to American taxpayers. These Chinese maternity tourists get citizenship, we get their unpaid medical bills. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacey on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Senator Ted Cruz has said that convicted drug kingpin El Chapo should pay for the wall. This is what he tweeted. He said, "Let's pass the El Chapo Act and make El Chapo pay to secure our border." I mean, it's getting a lot of attention, but do you think that that is any sort of serious proposition?
Very interesting. I don't know how much El Chapo has, but if he wants to, if we can use his money instead of taxpayer money to fund this particular appropriations package, why not?
Why not? Why wouldn't we do that? So let's go to the phones. If you just missed our interview with David Harms from India Partners, I want to encourage you to check out what they're doing. Go to afr.net. You heard him talk very passionately about the kids that they're rescuing there. Some of the children themselves are involved in the prostitution, and they're rescuing them. And so the number you can call to join in on that is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or you can go to afr.net. That's the fastest way to give. You can click straight through. $212 does a whole month worth of care for those kids. $2,560 does a whole year, and $7.08 does a day. So anything that you want to give, we are so grateful for it, and we appreciate you here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So let's go to the phones now. Amita, thank you so much for calling the show today.
Hi, Stacey. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. I just want to say thank you so much for giving a voice to us. We really love your show.
Oh, thank you.
And I also wanted to, my question is, I'm not understanding why we really need for Ted Cruz to try to get this passed through Congress, because when, like Border Patrol, when they confiscate money and, say, cars and et cetera, aren't they allowed to already use that money for Border Patrol?
I think that it goes to law enforcement efforts, but if I'm understanding it correctly, the El Chapo Act would designate that the $14 billion went straight to building the wall. So that would be the difference, because I think what has been done in the past, because you're right, there's a lot of things that are confiscated in enforcing the border. And I think what they do is they'll use it for agents or funding different priorities that they have within the agency. And what he wants to do is take the money and put it directly into funding the border wall, which would mean that the money would be line itemed out to specifics having to do with construction, maintenance, or repair, or maybe even just construction. I don't know why it's necessary. It seems to me like it would be so logical that some pencil pusher would just say, we have $14 billion here that we just confiscated from this guy, and the president has ordered us to move it here, and so that's what we're going to do. It seems like that would be the case.
Because the money is already there. They've confiscated it. They can use it for border protection. The wall is the border protection, so build the wall.
I agree. I don't know why it has to be an act, because the very idea of having it go back to Congress means Democrats can say, well, yeah, but then that would be a campaign promise fulfilled by the president, so we can't support that. And they'd find some inane, idiotic reason not to support it. Richard in Alabama. Hey, Richard, thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Hey, Tracy.
Hi.
I think that the Democrats, with their dying breath, will fight this, because if they can't line their pockets with it and they can't say Trump lost, they would rather die than agree to that. Plain and simple.
And you're right. They would. They would rather see other Americans die than agree to do anything like, I don't know, let money that's already sitting there it's literally, if you think about it, it's American money that this guy he's used a criminal enterprise to get that money from Americans. And true enough, they paid the money for drugs. And it's a choice that people make. And I'm not trying to let anybody off the hook. I'm not saying that these drug lords are forcing Americans into, doing drugs and paying for this stuff. But I am saying that if the money's already there and it's sitting there, it's not just me. You hear the callers are saying the same thing. And also, it's kind of amazing that we even are seeing others in government, and even people, like if you go online and type in the search window El Chapo Act on Twitter, you'll find a lot of people kind of on there arguing about it and admitting that it's a good use for the money. Sometimes I feel like, when Amita called and said, hey, this is what's happening, what we're seeing is they're already confiscating things from people at the border. They're already doing this. What's the big deal? Well, I kind of wonder where that money is going. And I know there's probably some website somewhere, and if I spend, some time tonight looking for it, I can find it, that would tell us where the majority of the money that comes from drug interdiction, where does it go? When they confiscate these vehicles, I know they auction the vehicles off to the public, and they auction off the jewelry. When they confiscate jewelry from these guys, whatever they take from them, it gets auctioned off. I know that, but then what do they do with the proceeds? Do they just use it for operations? Because sometimes that, to me, kind of has a whiff of fraud, waste, and abuse, where it's just extra money there, so they burn through it. Better desk chairs, fancier toilets, conferences in Las Vegas. I'm not saying that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is doing that, but other agencies have been known to do things like that, to burn through dollars at the end of the fiscal year. Immigration and Customs Enforcement it happens to be an agency that is really, they're overtaxed for the amount of money that they have. If ever there was a case for increasing funding to a government agency, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is that case. And I'm all about the smaller government and spending less money on the government. But, we'll have to see what happens. I almost have a feeling of fatality about it, which means I should pray about it, because whenever you're feeling fatal about something, you pray about it, and the Lord will change your outlook on it. The reason I say that, though, is because Ted Cruz has a lot of brilliant ideas. And usually what happens is Democrats hear Ted Cruz has an idea. They know it's an idea that would work, that would be fantastic, and so they're automatically against it. And they'll do anything to stop it. Anything they have to do to stop what he's trying to get done from happening, they'll do it. So I want to point you to India Partners again today. This is our emphasis day, so you're going to hear us talking about this a lot today. And we really appreciate your being here with us and partnering with us. The 10 people who jumped in last segment, we want to double or triple that number. We want your help here today. 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or you can go to afr.net. And this is money that directly helps little kids. It rescues them and gives them a warm place to stay and just really changes their entire outlook because they get to learn about Jesus Christ, and then they start operating from a totally different place. You heard the one child in the audio clip talking about this whole idea that there were many different gods, and that is the plural God thing is like a thing for India. It's one of the things that they practice there. And so if you're learning that there's one God and he's really interested in your life and that you can pray to him and you can feel better, and it's just a radical change. It's kind of hard for us to imagine because, if you're like me, you've been going to church since you can remember. I was, baptized in church, dedicated in church with the cross on my forehead, in the little white dress, all that stuff. So I've never had a perspective where I thought any of the other religions were real. But for kids who've never experienced the gospel, this is life-changing. It's like a fresh wind that blows through and changes everything. And so partnering with us helps us get that done. One more time, I'll give you the phone number, 877-616-2396 or afr.net, 877-616-2396 or afr.net to give and participate with us. So you're probably wondering, besides that little bit there, the whole idea that we've got the wall going on and all that stuff, what are some of the things that we see coming with Andrew McCabe and this whole, and I read some blogs that call this whole situation the uniparty because so many Republicans actually do want to see cheap labor and they don't want to see the border sealed up. And so this is a prime situation for them. And the way to go about it is to act as if they're for border security, but to really help stymie the whole thing. Now, CNBC breaking news is just reporting, updated 2 minutes ago, that President Trump will sign the border deal to keep the government open and accept what's been offered by the Democrats, but he will also declare a national emergency to try to build his proposed border wall. This has been confirmed by the White House. What's so funny about this is that he doesn't have to do this. He doesn't actually have to. And I have some audio for you that we'll get to a little bit later he doesn't have to do the national emergency. Now, it's been done so many times before. Every president has used the national emergency declaration to get something done. But this will probably be the first time in which the national emergency declaration, if President Trump decides to make it, becomes such a point of contention because they really don't want to see the president get the wall done. I almost think it's not an exaggeration to say that if the president is able to build a wall, that he is guaranteeing his reelection. Because so many people will say, well, he was able to get that done. And the contenders on the Democrat side are very much in the vein of, they're in the vein of not having to do anything to really get elected. They don't have to promise anything. They just come in with these slogans like Barack Obama just promised hope and change. Nothing quantifiable. So at the end of his presidency, the first term, he didn't have to have accomplished anything. He just had to have made some people feel hopeful, and things had to have changed. Hope and change doesn't even mean it changes for the better. He said he would transform America. Well, he did, but it doesn't have to be for the better. So Americans, when faced with a choice of a man who said he was going to get a wall built and spent 2 years fighting for it and then started to got it done, the Democrats know that's a winner, and they're not going to let it happen if there's any way they can prevent it. So this is where we have to do everything that we can to support this. I don't want to do the national emergency though. So remember yesterday on the show, we were talking to Cassie Smettle of the RNC, and I mentioned that we discussed this on the air, that there was a possibility of there being another way around this, and that if the president were to use its USMC 10, I'm going to get you the exact number here. The president could actually utilize an existing provision of the law because he's fighting drug trafficking. And so all he has to do is, and we went over this, it was over, Daniel Horowitz. Daniel Horowitz wrote the story, and it's over at Conservative Review. And if we definitely had him do that, if the president were to just use existing law, he wouldn't have so many things that he'd have to worry about because it wouldn't be anything that could be taken to Congress. He'd be operating within the parameters. Now, we haven't discussed what's actually in the bill, and I want to give you a little bit of what's going on. The House Freedom Caucus is actually trying to buy time for the president, and this is another story. It's Chris Pandolfo's writing here. This is out just today. The Conservative House Freedom Caucus is urging Congress to slam the emergency brake on the bipartisan security deal. No one's read it. It's over 1,000 pages long. They've found several provisions that undermine security at the border. And some of those provisions are going to be the ones that they're like poison pills. There's an ironclad reason to do a short, clean CR no matter your views, and that is that the current legislation is 1,169 pages. It's the swamp in action. Now, according to Thomas Massey, the Republicans had a 3-day rule that was regularly violated and totally, flouted for the past 6 years. Now, just 6 weeks into this new Congress, the Democrats' shiny new 72-hour rule is broken. So much for having time to read a bill before you vote on it. Now, I was told earlier today that there were like hundreds of people at the White House that had taken sections of the bill and were reading it and summarizing it so that they could get it done in the amount of time that's needed. So I don't believe the president is going to be unable to say, they don't know what's in the bill. But here's one of the gems. Section 224 of this bill says that ICE may not remove any sponsor or potential sponsor or member of a household of an unaccompanied minor. So that's de facto sanctuary for anyone who's brought into the country or brings into the country an unaccompanied minor. 30 to 40% of the MS-13 arrests have been unaccompanied children. Again, 30 to 40% of MS-13 have been unaccompanied children. So there is a serious amnesty sanctuary provision stuck in. That's one of them. Potential sponsor. Do you hear how broad that is? You could almost say anything. Now, Section 231 says none of the funds made available by this act or prior acts are available for the construction of pedestrian fencing within the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge, Benson, Rio Grande Valley State Park, La Lomita Historical Park, National Butterfly Center, west or east of the Vista Del Mar Ranch tract. In other words, tons of areas that are wide open right now would have to remain wide open, and they've also placed this provision, this restriction. It goes on any previous allocation. So any money the president currently has that he was planning on using in these areas would be barred by this new bill. Areas that would have to remain permanently open forever. All right. Thanks for being here today. God bless you from the Heartland. See you tomorrow.
Urban Family Talk.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says President Trump will sign a border security bill, but that's not all. According to McConnell, the president will also declare a national emergency at the border.
And I've indicated to him that I'm going to support the national emergency declaration. So for all of my colleagues, the President will sign the bill. We'll be voting on it shortly.
And just what is that national emergency? Here now is Fox News reporter John Roberts.
I mean, a lot of people thought that the president might use this option, but there was a lot of thought that he probably wouldn't use the option. He has said many, many times that he would rather do it legislatively, but it's clear that the president thought that he could not do it legislatively, so now he's going to declare the national emergency. The national emergency, as the president sees it, is a humanitarian and economic emergency that exists across our southern border. Tens of thousands of people are being apprehended every month by Customs and Border Protection, the Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement for crossing over into this country or being in this country illegally. Customs and Border Protection facilities are filled to bursting. There are a lot of family units. There are a lot of unaccompanied children that are coming across the border. And the president believes that the best way to deal with that is to build a border barrier, add an additional 200 and some odd miles of fencing, particularly in Texas.
More coverage next hour. You can also stay up to speed at onenewsnow.com. The Senate has confirmed William Barr to be U.S. Attorney General, placing the veteran government official and lawyer atop the Justice Department as Special Counsel Robert Mueller investigates so-called Russian interference in the 2016 election. Democrats, who largely voted against Barr, said they were concerned about his non-committal stance on making Mueller's report public. Today's vote was 54-45. There was a moment of silence in schools across Florida today on this, the anniversary of the massacre in Parkland. Fox's Eben Brown reports from Florida.
At the corner of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas campus, a small garden has been augmented with extra flowers, with candles, and with angel figurines. It's where students and parents have come to take a moment to reflect among themselves. Vicky Torres' son was a student that day and still is today.
He's going to counseling and he's getting the help that he needs. But, you know, loud noises still shock these kids. And that's what today's all about. It's really about the kids and the teachers and you know, having to be at the scene of the crime every single day is a tough thing.
Torres says her son was once an honor roll student. Now his grades are very poor. In Parkland, Florida, Eben Brown, Fox News.
A Texas man is off to prison after police found him illegally possessing a partially 3D printed gun and target list. Jeff Manasso has details.
Eric McGinnis gets 8 years in prison after police in suburban Dallas found him in the woods in 2017 with a partially 3D printed AR-15 and a list that included home and office addresses of several Democrat and Republican federal lawmakers. McGinnis was barred at the same time from possessing firearms stemming from a 2015 altercation with a girlfriend in order of protection. Prosecutors believe McGinnis had an interest in the man who shot several Republican lawmakers at a congressional baseball practice in 2017 in Virginia. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And another rough day in Parliament for Britain's Prime Minister. Simon Owen reports from London.
The noes to the left, 303.
Prime Minister Theresa May suffering another parliamentary defeat on Brexit. Lawmakers rejecting a motion asking them to reaffirm support for May's efforts to renegotiate her plan for Britain's divorce from the European Union.
So the noes have it. The noes have it.
It's only a symbolic vote, but it is embarrassing for the Prime Minister as she tries to secure changes from EU leaders to a Brexit plan which British lawmakers rejected last month. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
That's all our time for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the program today, you guys. Thank you so much for being with us here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. It's my pleasure to be with you. And this hour on the show, we're going to be chatting with Lowell Ponte. He is a former think tank futurist and retired roving editor at Reader's Digest. He's going to be chatting us to talk about Elizabeth Warren joining the presidential warpath. And I tell you what, it's going to be something pretty interesting if the Democrats' field remains as it currently is, with basically nothing but radicals. How do they convince Americans to vote for that? It has to be that they demonize the president. It has to be that they bring him down through impeachment. And I also think that's why we haven't seen anything from RBG, because they're holding on because they think they can just keep her in that seat, warming it until they can impeach President Trump, and then they can maybe get a pick that would be more palatable to them. And I don't know why they think they would be able to get that from, Vice President Pence, but who knows what they actually have planned for the whole deal. So we're going to be chatting with Lowell Ponte, and I know I'm really disappointed. I'm going to read the rest of what is going on with the bill that the Democrats came up with. I can't believe Republicans were involved in this negotiation. It doesn't seem like the Republicans got anything out of the whole thing. I'm going to read a list of everything that's wrong with this thing. First, I want you to listen to Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham says we need to take the border deal as a down payment to build a wall and then declare the national emergency. But if he signs this bill, there's a whole bunch of stuff that he could do before that he won't be able to do. They're basically rolling back some of the things that the president is currently able to do. They're walling off areas of the border that would essentially be you'd never be able to secure them. They're basically saying these have to remain open. It's unbelievable, but that's what they're doing. It's number 5.
In last year's appropriation bill, Section 284, I think, allows the president to spend up to $880 million to erect barriers where there are drug corridors. That's a pot of money. The bill also allows to move $4 billion around in the defense budget at the discretion of the president and the secretary. When you add all that up, it's pretty much what he needs. So why should he take this deal? The 1.375 can be used to build barriers. Nancy Pelosi said not a dollar for barriers or a wall. He's going to get almost
1.375.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot more than a dollar. He's going to get money for more judges. Nobody talks about that. There is no limit on bed space like I was worried about. So take this as a down payment. Go into the defense bill and move money around like Congress allowed you to do last year and build this wall. $5.7 billion is what he wants. The difference between 1.375, find on your own, declare a national emergency because it is, and move the money around and secure this border.
So what are we talking about here? He says to go ahead and sign this bill, then do the national emergency, which we all know, even though Congress lacks standing to declare anything or to sue against a national emergency, there's a judge out there who will ignore that because they already have this figured out. That is the whole point of this. I almost feel like I know the air traffic controllers were talking about walking and the TSA agents weren't there, but the president should have brought in private contractors to keep the airports open, and he should have left the government closed until Nancy Pelosi blinked, and she didn't. And now this deal is worse than the one that they had in December. And don't take it from me. This is the list from Ryan James Gudersky. He's with another organization. This is over at Conservative Review. So the bill secures more than $3.1 billion in foreign health services, more than twice the amount that's allocated for the wall. That money is actually allocated $3,117,450,000 US dollars would be allocated to, get this now, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. That money would go there, and it would have to remain available until September 30th of 2020. In other words, just before the president is either reelected or someone else takes his place. That money would go to USAID, which is notorious for just sending money to despots in foreign countries. It doesn't help the people who are there. DHS cannot increase border crossing fees. So one of the things that we do to deter immigration is we increase the fee to cross the border. Can't do that anymore. It has to stay the same. Border wall construction would only be allowed in the Rio Grande Valley section. $415 million for humanitarian aid, $77 million for opioid equipment, 1,200 new Customs and Border Patrol agents. The bill does expand catch and release by reducing the number of border beds from 49,060 to 40,520. So fewer beds to house the criminals. We talked about this. This is, it's actually more than 9,000 because they're already at, I think they said 47,000 beds are being used. So they're over the number that they're actually allocated because there are so many people, criminals who are in the country that they've got to deport. So they're going to have to reduce by 18,000. Whatever number they say they're reducing by, you multiply that times 2 at a minimum. But we're talking about them already being at 417, I think they said. Or, sorry, they're at 47,000. Right now, the max is 49,060. Unbelievable. No funding for additional enforcement and removal field personnel. No more new ICE agents to deport people who are already here illegally. Expands the alternatives to detention program from 82,000 to 100,000. So that means people, instead of being housed in family units at the border, they get moved into the interior of the country, which means they're staying here forever. $40 million for additional ICE staff dedicated to overall ATD case management, particularly for asylum seekers. So you don't get new ICE agents, but you do get new people who would work at ICE to help illegal aliens settle in a non-detention center in the country. They basically find them a home to go to so that they can stay here. The bill gives $1 billion to the Smithsonian Institute. That's just pork added in. $3.4 billion in refugee assistance, which is $74 million more than was provided for last year. $4.4 billion for international disaster assistance, $100 million more than last year. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but we have quite a few disasters here in this country. Quite a few times that the president has said, oh my goodness, look at that storm. Look at that. Look at the amount of snow that's fallen there. Look at the number of lines that are down for power lines down for ice and everything. That's a national emergency or disaster declaration. I'm sorry. He says that's a disaster declaration. And then that means federal funds are available to go to those states to help them dig out of whatever it is, hurricane, windstorm, whatever. We're also giving $4.4 billion to other foreign countries so they can fix their disasters. Why are we responsible for that? $3.4 billion in refugee assistance. I said that, but I just have to stress it again because why are we doing that? Also, the bill does not eliminate any foundations that Trump wanted to get rid of. President Trump requested that we eliminate the Asia Foundation, the U.S. African Development Foundation, the Inter-American Foundation, and the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. These are all shills for bringing refugees here. And he wanted them eliminated, and they're still there. Israel, Ukraine, and Jordan received $5.3 billion. Still more than what the president's getting for the wall. So there's amnesty. Catch and release is expanded, more money for foreign aid than there is for a wall, and the fence funding that is included is severely limited. This is absolutely unconscionable. They want to take the UAC statute, which provides refugee status for minors who are victims of a severe form of trafficking and have no relatives in the country. So the government is basically saying, if the relatives pay to traffic you into the country and you have no one here, you have to basically reunite their families with them as refugees. So all you have to do, if you want to live in America, according to this new bill, you pay a drug mule to send your kid into America. And then after this bill is signed, you'll be able to then reach out and say, I need to be reunited with my child. And America will have to reunite you with your kid here in America as a refugee, bypassing our immigration statutes, bypassing your need to live here for 5 years, work, learn English, learn the Constitution, pass a citizenship test, and then apply for citizenship, and then get it and pay the fees. You get to bypass all of that. All you have to do is get a drug mule to get your kid into America. Then you can be reunited with them. You would be a refugee. Your child's already here as an unaccompanied minor, and now you're all Americans. This is what the Democrats have given to us. The bill actually rewards family members who are breaking in, and it empowers the drug cartels to not only treat kids like, suitcases, just get it in there. Just put the kid inside America. But it shields the kids and the people who are doing this from deportation. Now, I saw emails from Ali Pack that were just scathing about this bill. And I was kind of thinking, you know, they're hardline on immigration. I'm hardline, but they make me look like a cream puff. But they're right. And everybody's worried about the precedent that's set by the president declaring an emergency declaration. But no one is talking to him about, you know, it was the thing that Cassie and I were discussing yesterday. I mean, it's kind of shocking that that's what's going on. And so I keep looking and I keep seeing, I'm like, okay, when is someone going to talk about that option? The option of just using these drug cartels are criminal organizations, yes, but they're also practicing a form of terrorism the way they're killing Americans. Why wouldn't he just declare them terrorist organizations and then he wouldn't have to go through Congress at all? So I don't understand why he's not doing it that way. I don't. And so the foreign aid, I'm trying to find something in this that's good. Did the Republicans get anything? They claim that the Republicans got something. What did they get? So we can't possibly know all of the details of a 1,169-page bill. We can't possibly have taken the time to have analyzed that. Even like I was talking about last hour with 100 people in the White House going through and summarizing, you know, everybody takes a certain number of pages and they read it and they summarize it. And, you know, they put the highlights in there and then you can read that instead of the 1,000 pages. Even with that, we have a bigger problem here, and that is that the current process that we are utilizing for authorizing funds in the United States enables the Democrats to hold the American people hostage and force through bills that are actually, a lot of these provisions in here go against standing law. So they're going to pass a bill that has provisions in it that create laws that go against laws we already have, which always works in their favor because then they just take it to a court and the court will say, well, I find your thing, which was existing law before, unconstitutional. This is what's constitutional because this is the law right now. And when you say, well, that law contravenes this previous law, but that's not what we found. And then that court enables whoever it is, whatever Democrat or whatever, to do this. And as a side note, I don't know how anybody who votes for the Democrats, how you can listen to this and not be utterly flabbergasted by it. How you can hear that this is what's happening and this is what Democrats are doing. Anything to save illegal immigration. How can you stomach it? How can that not just enrage you and make you want to never have anything to do with them again? So this is less wall than the Democrats originally agreed to. I mean, I have to hammer home these points because this is the truth of what's going on here. Trump originally demanded $25 billion. He negotiated himself down to 5.6. Democrats balked and agreed to 1.6. This bill calls it a day at 1.375. No concrete walls of any kind. No ability to adapt. Unbelievable. All right, when we get back, we'll have Lowell Ponte with us. Find out more at StacyOnTheRight.com, or you can hit the subscribe button. Also, Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. Go to AFR.net and UrbanFamilyTalk.com for the podcasts. We'll be right back with more.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use a multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this, and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean laundry products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hello, I'm Pastor Joseph Parker, and this is Daily Time in the Word. It's our goal to help you better understand the great blessing of spending time in God's Word every single day. The book of Genesis begins with these words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Verses 1 through 3, Genesis chapter 1. The book of Genesis is the book whereby the Lord introduces his book, the Bible, the Word of God, to us, the written Word of God. It's a powerful book with many important insights. Genesis has 50 chapters with 4 main events and 4 main individuals or characters. The 4 main events are creation, flood, the fall, and the scattering of nations. The 4 key characters are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And it has many insights that help us to better understand the truths of all of the Word of God. It also introduces us to the need for why we need a Savior. I would encourage and challenge you on a regular basis, you and each member of your family, to read the book of Genesis on a regular basis. It reminds us, amongst other things, about the bigness of God as you look at the story of creation, but also as you look at God's sovereignty over his people and over the nation of Israel and over the world as well. Father, thank you, Lord, for the wonderful gift of the book, the whole book, the Bible, and thank you for the unique book of the book of Genesis. Help us to read it on a regular basis and help us to allow it to minister to our mind, body, and spirit according to your perfect will. Thank you for this wonderful book in your word. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here today on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thanks for making our network your home on the radio. We appreciate that. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Lowell Ponte, a former think tank futurist and retired roving editor at Reader's Digest. He has written articles that have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and other major publications. Lowell, thank you for joining the show today.
Stacy, always wonderful to be back with you.
So I'm excited to hear, well, I don't know. Should I be excited to hear you talk about Elizabeth Warren running? She seems like the perfect candidate because Trump likes to make fun of her, but a lot of people take her seriously.
Well, she's 69 years old. She is a veteran politician and political manipulator. What's interesting about Elizabeth Warren today, though, is unlike other Democrats who wear blackface, she wears red face. She, by pretending to be a Native American when she really wasn't, gathered millions of dollars, much of it from Harvard University, holding a professor's seat there that was set aside for a genuine Native American, an American Indian, to occupy. She took that away from Native Americans, and she's never offered to give back even a penny of the money she took. In the meanwhile, she has just joined one of the new socialist members. By the way, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is exactly 40 years younger than Elizabeth Warren. But that does not keep Elizabeth Warren from trying to capture her young ideas. She signed on immediately to the idea of the Green New Deal. Even though it's a rather strange idea, I'm glad that Republicans are having the Senate vote, making everyone say whether they're for it or against it, because it claims it would replace airplanes with high-speed railroads, it would banish most cars, it would outlaw fossil fuels and nuclear power, it would retrofit every building in America, home, office building, and otherwise. Oh, and it would provide a guaranteed secure income for all those who are unable or unwilling to work, which is rather striking.
Unwilling is the word that's rather striking. I mean, unable, we get that. We're already doing that. But
sure,
unwilling? So let me tell you something. There are days when I'm unwilling to clean my house. Will she provide me with someone to, come over here and clean it up? There are a lot of things people are unwilling to do. And what makes us do those things is the fact that if we don't do them, the consequences are so negative that we negotiate with ourselves. I don't feel like getting up and going to work today. I have a headache. I feel like I've got water balloons behind my eyeballs. Whatever the problem is, my shoulders hurt. But then I think, if I don't work today, I don't get paid. Or I have committed to work today. I have people I'm going to interview on the show. Or, whatever the case might be, it's a real negotiation with yourself. If you take away that negotiation and say, you're getting paid whether you go there or not, what is the impetus to get up and go at all?
Really, and in addition to that, Elizabeth Warren has proposed two rather striking ideas to compete with her younger radical rivals. She's proposed a wealth tax, not a tax on people's income, however rich they are, but a tax on whatever they've been able to accumulate in their life. Special tax on their property, on their savings, on their assets, and so on. She would tax 2 to 3% of all that they have every year. So that would just keep nibbling away on whatever they've accomplished. The other is she wants an accountable capitalism act, as she calls it, that would take every major corporation in America and require them to serve not only their workers and shareholders, but also to serve what she calls stakeholders, which means radical activists in the community, organized labor activists, all kinds of other people, most of them on the political left. She doesn't define exactly what this means, so the real effect of that law would be to say that politicians will determine whether you continue to have a government charter, which you would require big corporations to have. In other words, she's nationalizing every large corporation in America by that law. She's saying, well, we can take this away from you because we think you didn't do enough for the radical activists in your community. And that's rather troubling. By the way, as we ponder the Bible, you look at two of the 10 commandments. One is thou shalt not steal. Another is thou shalt not covet, which is to say envy and so on. Mm-hmm. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's ox, nor thy neighbor's ass, nor thy neighbor's wife, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. If you took those two things seriously, Democrat politicians would have nothing to do. I mean, that's their whole political agenda. That other person has more money than you do. He's wealthy. We're going to take it away from him and give it to you.
That other person is white. That other person is skinny. That other person is heterosexual. That other person has kids that came from their biological body. If you think about that other person thinks they understand what gender they are. We need to take that away from them and make them declare what pronouns they use. Do you see? They've gotten so good at taking from other people that they can even take things that previously we didn't know we could take other people's mental sanity, but now we're all participating in the insane rituals of the organized left as it pertains to their social ideas, the way we treat children, parents now declaring their kids X on their birth certificate so that the child can decide later if they want to be a girl or a boy, regardless of what their body actually has on it, like the X and X chromosomes, X and Y.
Of course, you're assuming they'll be lucky enough to get to a birth certificate. We now have New York and Virginia promoting the idea of letting parents kill a baby even after it's born.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Which is intriguing. African Americans, for instance, make up 12.5% of the U.S. population, and yet they account for 25% of all the abortions done by Planned Parenthood. And the other day I saw a fascinating article at American Thinker that was arguing, why don't we give the mothers whose child is aborted a share of the profit from that? After all, Planned Parenthood not only sells the abortion and gets millions of dollars. It had given $2 million, for example, in campaign donations to the governor of Virginia, who was all in favor of such abortions after birth. But now we have this surreal situation where they, as we found out from people who were taping them secretly, they are buying luxury cars and so on with the money they make from selling the parts from the babies they have aborted, the various labs and so on. Why not let the mother, said this our author, have half of the profit from that? Why should only Planned Parenthood get rich from performing abortions, about $250,000 a year?
What's frightening about what that writer is suggesting is that if any Democrats get a whiff of it, which is highly unlikely because they don't read, well laid out blogs and websites like American Thinker, but if they were ever to get a whiff of that, they would totally be on board with it, because they would say that's reappropriating wealth from oppressors back to the women who really deserve it. And I know it sounds odd and crazy, but doesn't everything that we've just been discussing here sound odd and crazy and unbelievable? And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This idea, for example, of a universal guaranteed income to everyone is being experimented with in Chicago right now, being experimented with in Finland, being experimented with in Italy, and so on, to see if people will be happy if they're just guaranteed an income for doing nothing at all. Now, this is an idea not just embraced by the left, strangely enough, but at the American Enterprise Institute, their libertarian scholar Charles Murray is in favor of it for the same reason that Milton Friedman understood, and that is about 85 cents out of every dollar that the government allocates to help the poor never gets to the poor. It gets eaten up by the bureaucracy in between, by the social workers, the $100,000 a year political appointees, and so on. So only a pittance of that ever gets to the poor. Charles Murray would say, we'll give more of that to the poor, but then let's eliminate those middlemen. Let's just get rid of the whole welfare bureaucracy that deliberately keeps people poor to keep its bureaucracy working. By the way, Craig Smith and I, you see Craig on every week on Fox Business with Neil Cavuto. In our 7th book now out, Money, Morality, and the Machine, we talk about the politics behind this giving people free income, and how it is planned and how it's advocated by both Murray and people on the left. And you can get that book absolutely free. You don't have to give Jeff Bezos $20 for it at Amazon. All you need to do is call a toll-free number, 800-630-1492, like the year Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That's 800-630-1492. And we'll cover the postage, the cost of the book, everything. This is our Blues Brothers mission from God. We just want for our children and grandchildren, everybody to be armed with information about just how they're manipulating us.
Well, I think that's awesome that you're giving the book away for free. I'll post the number on Facebook so people will be able to go there and get the number, because invariably people will be messaging me in the middle of the night asking me what the number was. I haven't memorized it, but I'll definitely put it here on Facebook for people to get.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that is most disturbing about all of this is that it's a cancer that's infected every area of politics where Democrats are present, and they're present in all of the areas. Specifically, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the border wall negotiations, but we're seeing the same kind of perfidy that you're describing in all of these other areas where the Democrats are saying, we'll just give us the money and we'll give it to the people who need it, the poor people, the people who want to have abortions, everyone. They're in charge of all of that. It's a flaming dumpster fire, yet they still remain in charge. And now they're actually rolling back laws that make sense on immigration with this new bill that if the president signs it, yeah, he gets $1.375 billion for the wall, but he won't be able to build it because they're only allowing him to build it in the Rio Grande Valley sector, which is the most liberal part of the United States border with Mexico. And none of the officials, elected officials down there, will actually allow wall to be built in their area. They've already declared that they don't want wall built there. So that's the only area he can use the money that's being allocated in this bill to build wall. Everywhere else where there are conservatives in charge, where they want wall, the president can't build there with the money that they're allocating.
Oh, it's a surreal exercise, no doubt about it. And I'm a Californian. I'm about 50 miles from the border now as we speak. And to me, I'm in a state where 1/3 of all the nation's welfare recipients live, where more than 1/4 of all the illegal aliens live, where tens and tens of thousands of people are in permanent poverty here, because frankly, it's easier to live in poverty in a state like California than it is to earn money and pay the kind of horrific taxes that we have in this state. So we see bizarre politics politics on every. And by the way, not only have we seen Elizabeth Warren and a lot of other liberals sign on to this Green Deal that would take us back 150 years in technology and give free income to everyone, but one of those who signed on was Senator Cory Booker. Cory Booker, a few days ago, was declaring himself a vegan, saying he says meat eaters' days are numbered. Now, I think back, and yes, I know the liberals are planning a 163% tax on meat because they don't really want us to have choice about such things. But wasn't there a politician in the 20th century who was a vegan, a vegetarian? Oh, that's right, Adolf Hitler was a vegetarian.
I didn't realize.
They say that you are what you eat. And I guess if all Cory Booker eats are vegetables, it explains a great deal about his politics.
Well, I actually know people who are vegetarians, not vegans, but vegetarians because health-wise, you know, they're for whatever reason their body couldn't sustain continuing to eat meat, and so they are vegetarians. But the ones that
I'm kidding. I'm
obviously
kidding about
I know,
that.
but
my wife is a vegetarian.
Yeah, but
too,
I'm making the point about that just to say that even the most extreme things that they're advocating for, we can find people doing them logically, but that is the unique talent of the Democrats, is to take something completely and utterly normal as a choice, like choosing to be a vegetarian, and to turn that into something that would be harmful, because there are people out there who can't, their body doesn't process the vegetables the way that the people who can be vegetarians can, so that literally being a vegetarian would be a death sentence for them. And there are other people who they don't eat red meat anymore because their bodies can't process that form of protein, and making them eat meat would be a death sentence for them, which is why all of us love living here, because in America we're free to decide if we want to be a vegetarian or a strictly, you know, red meat eater or whatever, pescatarian. All of these ideas by themselves, if you can take it or leave it, they're not so bad. But when they become mandatory death sentences by the Democrats, that's when we run into huge problems. We're talking about stripping away every bit of prosperity we have in this country with this Green New Deal.
Oh, sure. I should say after 44 years of marriage to a vegetarian, now I, too, am a vegetarian. I just happen to be a lacto-ovo-fish-o-faulo-carno vegetarian.
I was going to say, wait a minute. Lowell, that's not exactly a vegetarian. You know what I think you're doing, which I love? I love it. I see this among older married couples, too, especially married couples that we, like, they're some of our favorites. Whatever the one spouse is doing, the other one totally approves of it, even if it's not their thing. And so they support it fully. It's almost as if they're the biggest supporter of that thing, even though they're not doing it. So when you say you're a vegetarian too, I get what you're saying. I totally get it, because your wife is one and the two of you are a match set. You're like a pair
I'm
of
so glad.
bookends.
What troubles me about liberals is, for example, they will spend a lot of time tearing down the statue of a slave owner who died 150 years ago, and yet they are attempting to impose slavery on you and me, Stacey, every day.
Every day.
With massive taxes, massive regulations, and so on. They want to impose their political correctness, their Puritanism on us.
And the massive illegal immigration that's going on, because the 10% of the DUIs that are done by illegal aliens, if you cut all of the DUIs in this country by 10%, imagine how many people don't get killed on the roadway. Imagine how many families don't have to suffer through, you know, the hospitalizations and the expense of nursing someone back to health after they've been hit by an illegal alien. There's so much that they're doing that's wrong and harmful to us, yet here we are. Just, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Lowell Ponte, thank you so much for joining the show today, and for your wonderful writing. I put the link to the book for people to call on Facebook. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Always an honor to be on with you, Stacey. Thank you for having the courage to be a beacon of light out there.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for your writing and your work. We need it here in this country. That was Lowell Ponte. We always love talking to him. So he's brilliant. He really has a grip on this stuff. We're going to be back with more right after these messages. Keep it here.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's Uncommon Moment.
Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman is one of the most accomplished passers ever to play the game. But Aikman believes he never got to show what he was really made of. His halfback, Emmitt Smith, holds the record for most career rushing yards. He's widely considered the greatest of all time. That meant that the Cowboys' offense was balanced and didn't have to rely solely on their quarterback like the Dolphins relied on Dan Marino or the Packers relied on Brett Favre. But Aikman was humble enough to play to the best of his ability on every snap, even when he wasn't the one getting the glory. Sometimes, uncommon teamwork means helping others to shine brighter than yourself.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
There's a particular reason why there is a Back to God radio show. It was about 4 years ago, God called me out of the pulpit and said, Dexter, I need you to go tell my people it's time for them to get back to God, back to my morals, back to my values. This is the thing that you're supposed to do simply because you belong to the Most High God. It's the least that you can do for a God that loves you the way that he does.
Time to get back to God. Weekday afternoons at 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Hi, friends. There's a new show in town on Urban Family Talk. Nightly, 7 p.m. Central. Join me, C.L. Bryant, as we build the bridge to conversation throughout our great nation, the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known. Nightly, the C.L. Bryant Show over Urban Family Talk, 7 p.m.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problems, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Or anywhere in our country or the free world. I think it was right for Democrat leaders to condemn those remarks, but I think it's important that people that articulate anti-Semitic views are also held accountable. The Republican leadership was right to condemn Stephen King's remarks and also to remove him from the committee. There were consequences to what he said, and unless Representative Omar resigns from Congress, at minimum, Democrat leaders should remove her from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I served on that committee for more than a decade, Andrea. I mean, one of the things that always united that committee was strong support for our relationship with Israel and a strong condemnation of anti-Semitism.
So one of the things that I think Vice President Pence has so right there, speaking about Representative Omar and her comments about Jewish people over and over and over again, she keeps wading in. No sooner than she had apologized for her latest really horrible comment, she was retweeting a really negative Jewish trope about the appearance of Jewish people. It seems like whenever she apologizes or walks back a comment, she immediately goes in and makes a new one, and as if to reinforce the idea that this is what she truly believes. Some of her Democratic colleagues have come out and said that she's a bright, shining star and she has a huge future with the Democrats, but she has to leave some of her old beliefs behind. In other words, we know she's anti-Semitic. We're just waiting on her to let it go so she can continue to play this game with us. But I say if people on our side have to lose their committee appointments, then why shouldn't she? If Steve King could say that Western worldview, whatever, or Western civilization should be honored, and he lost all of his committee appointments, then why shouldn't she? She should not be on prestigious, powerful committees holding these views. It's an attempt to validate the hatred of Jewish people. And make no mistake about it, there is hatred of Jewish people in the Muslim community. Is it every single Muslim person? Of course not. But these are people who are dwelling in our midst in America who hate Jewish people, and Jews have a place in American society. It's undeniable. And this, so it's a building clash of civilizations. And we've brought it here to our shores. The Jewish people were here already, and then we decided to bring a whole bunch of Muslim people in. And I really don't care what anyone thinks about me just saying that. It's just logical. You don't move enemies into your house, do you? Do you find people that hate you and then say, yeah, come on in and live with me and my kids, and expect them to leave you and your kids alone? You sleep at night like a baby? Of course not. But that's what we're doing here in this country. But because of 9/11 or something like that. Because we were attacked. Ridiculous. So I would ask you also, I know I'm asking for a lot today, but stick with me. Go on Twitter and retweet. I tweeted the president, hey, POTUS, you must not sign that bill. Number 1, no real wall. Number 2, local officials have veto power over the wall. Number 3, this bill contains a blatant amnesty for the worst cartel smugglers. Number 4, more funding to manage and induce the invasion rather than deter it. And 5, doubling low-skilled workers. And some people have retweeted me, but, I don't know. I've had a few retweets, but I think we need more retweets than that. We need people to be aware of what horror this is. Awful. I'm flabbergasted that it's as bad as it is. I know the Democrats are crafty and they do a whole lot. And before I forget about it, other news today is that Amazon HQ2 will not be going in New York. The people there thought the tax breaks that they negotiated as a part of deciding to put 20,000 high-paying jobs there, they're not feeling it. The people of New York are like, no thanks. So they're not going to put the HQ2 there. They are going to put one in Nashville, and they're going to put one in, I think they said, North Carolina, which smart, very smart. Those are 2 hot areas of the country right now. Nashville is experiencing an explosion of growth. They have no state tax in Tennessee, so you can go there and reduce your tax burden by however much you're paying in state tax now. You can reduce it by that amount by simply moving to Nashville. So if you can find a job there, it's one of the top 10 places to live, or at least it was. It's consistently on the top 10 cities to live in across the country. But I love Nashville because it's a big, small town. It's kind of like St. Louis, but it doesn't have the horrible reputation for crime. So they do have clashes. Like, they have a lot of like racial clashes at times in Nashville. But I lived there for a couple of years when I was younger. And it's beautiful there. And they have good weather because they're a little bit further south than we are here in the St. Louis metro area. And they have a nice cost of living. Now, I don't know how long that lasts with 80,000 people a month moving there, some kind of astronomical number like that. But whenever I'm there for work, I remember I was just there interviewing Art Laffer. And it was a rainy day, but it was still warm enough. And they do have a nice airport. I have to give them that. Their airport's really nice. So you can get a nice home there for a very reasonable amount of money. And if you're an empty nester, then you're not worried about school districts. So you're just doing whatever you want. And then they have great colleges there. Belmont University is there. Vanderbilt University is there. So, it's a place people want to move to. You lower your tax burden. You have a cost of living that's reasonable. You have good weather. And it's south, but it's not like, it's not further south than that, because I've got nothing against the South. I love the South. I love the weather that Southerners get to enjoy. It's kind of unfair that. So I've been talking about this, amongst myself, talk amongst yourselves, that whole thing. But I'm really suffering. I'm suffering because real winter is here, and real winter, it's more than I've negotiated for. It's more than I bargained for. We've had 4 years of mild winters here in Missouri. And so the last time we had a winter like this was 5 years ago. And so I had someone mention that to me. I was somewhere complaining, as I want to do. You know what? I'm a work in progress. The Lord is not finished with me. And I was somewhere complaining about this real winter. Because I've taken to cracking jokes about it, because every time I go out and it's just biting cold, I'm like, where am I? Well, that's when a stranger, she was so cute. She said, you do realize the last time we had a winter like this was 5 years ago? We seem to be in a cycle. Every 5 years we have one of these really awful winters. So the consolation is, once this winter's over, we'll probably have a few mild winters after that. Doesn't that make you feel good? And I said, oh, God bless you. Thank you. That is such good news. She said, yeah, those last couple of weeks where we didn't see the sun. I said, yeah. I said, how did you fare? This is a stranger now, I'm telling you. I don't know this woman. She says, oh, I was depressed. I felt myself going downhill. I said, yeah, me too. Me too. I felt myself, it was like I was going into a black hole and I couldn't get out. I hadn't seen the sun and I was depressed. I was cooking dinner for the family and then basically going to my bed, 6:30, 6:45. My husband came home from work one night. He smelled the food, which I know it has to be a comfort, because if I come home and someone's already cooked, because usually I'm the one cooking, so if I come home and someone's already cooked, oh, it's like music to my nostrils. So I was upstairs getting ready to get in the bed. And he said, what's going on? Are you not feeling well? I said, I can't stay up. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I just can't seem to get going. He was like, oh, well, but it's 6:45. I said, I know, but I'm going in. So sometimes I'll feel like that. Like, you know, every so often I'll feel like I need to go to bed early, and I'll go get in the bed and I'll be in there. And then after a while of flipping and tossing and turning, I realize I'm not really that tired. And so then, you know what happens. You turn the TV on, or you get your phone, or you get a book out. And before you know it, you're in there with the light on, sipping from your water bottle, and, you know, you're awake. And so the next morning he told me, oh, how do you feel? I said, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I just wish the sun would come out. And he said, I came back up, you know, a couple hours after, you know, so it was like right before 9 o'clock. And I came back up to see if you had kind of changed your mind about going to bed. He said, you were in there sleeping hard, like it was, you know, like it was midnight. I said, oh, I know, because I was honestly it just presses you down. It's called seasonal affective disorder. But oh my goodness, it was just a hot mess. And so, I don't know, I just don't want this real winter every single winter. That's all I'm saying. I know I'm not in charge. I know I don't have anything that I can do to make the real winter not come next year, but that's my hope, is that the lady is right, that it's an every 5 year or so thing for us Missourians. I don't know what y'all going to do in the rest of the country, but I'm just talking about here. And I'm hoping that next year we'll have the mild winter we had last year, that we'll have that this year. So it doesn't mean it doesn't snow. It just means it doesn't stick around for a month. We still have blocks of ice from where the people scraped the snow into piles. And, you know, the piles were like mounds of mountain. It looked like a cloud had landed on the blacktop. Some of those piles are still there. Remember, it snowed like a month ago. So it's been weeks, and that snow has not fully melted. It melts, and then it gets super cold, and it's icy as all get out. Like everywhere and we've had, so church has been canceled twice. I mean, I can't even believe it, because we haven't been going to our church for decades or anything, but this is the first time I've ever seen that they've canceled church, but it was so icy that they weren't able to guarantee that people would be safe on the parking lot, so church was canceled. So I'm just telling you people, whatever we can do, whether we have to be praying and fasting, or what do we have to do to not have real winter next time? Not real winter. We want the mild winter we had before. I'm just putting that out there, because I know we have prayer warriors in the listening audience, and you guys are with me on this. I know you're with me. You don't want this real winter. You can't possibly. All right. So we came into this break with Vice President Pence talking about how at a minimum Democratic leaders should remove Omar from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Well, Matthew Continetti from the award-winning Washington Free Beacon says that the anti-Semitism, the tweets, the comments, etc., are actually a serial offense for Omar. It's number 4.
This has become a serial offense for her, right? She had that tweet about Israel hypnotizing the world.
Look, it's what
and it's not just her. It's not just her. It's also Rashida Tlaib. It's also Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who praised Jeremy Corbyn, who is friendly to Hezbollah. This is a problem for the Democratic Party. You talk about consequences. The political consequences of the Democratic Party being associated with political anti-Semitism are huge. And Eugene's absolutely right. There's a battle that is just beginning within the Democratic Party. And you look at what Mark Mellman is doing. They have to fight this. And the fact that it's being imported is very disturbing to members of the Jewish community.
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that there's been a strain of anti-Semitism on the left in certain constituency groups that the Democrats protect. And now that those constituency groups have attained mass in certain areas, they are sending people who believe what they believe to Congress. This was what conservatives and Republicans and Christians have been warning about for the past 20 years. Large numbers of immigrants from countries that hate Jewish people, those immigrants will come here, and not all of them will assimilate and begin to believe, as most of us do, that Jewish people are just like any other group of people. They're just people. Muslim people who are here, especially those recent immigrants, they hate the state of Israel and they hate Jewish people. Now, they do make a little bit of a delineation between Jews who are here in the United States who might be Democrats. They'll say, oh, I didn't mean to offend you, but Israel has hypnotized the world. Israel is full of people who have a certain shape of nose, et cetera, et cetera. These people, it's like they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth. And what they're saying is, you're not really Jewish because you don't believe the stuff that they believe. You actually think we should have a state called Palestine. That's why you're okay. But they don't. And we don't believe that they should exist. We still believe we should wipe them off the face of the earth, which is why it's good that you don't see them as a huge part of your identity, because we want you to join with us in wiping them off the face of the earth. And if we attain critical mass in Congress, we would reverse all of this, the Jewish democracy, the strongest democracy in the Middle East, our strongest ally in the Middle East. All of those people he named off, Tlaib and Omar, and even AOC, they would all advocate for a declaration that we don't have close ties to Israel. Our closest ally is the nation state of Palestine, and that Israel should give up its entirety of nation state. Just go anywhere else you want to go to, or allow us to wipe you off the face of the earth, and we'll put Palestine there. We don't care anything about your holy sites or your history. We don't care about that. We're here to wipe you out. That's what those people believe. And if you think for 1 second that because there are only 3 of them, that it's not such a big deal, you don't understand how things work. How do you get $100? Well, unless you're a thief and you go out and steal it, you build $100 a dollar at a time. How do you build a dollar a penny at a time? How do they build a majority in Congress? 3 at a time. They got 3 now. And they probably have others who believe as they do, but they just won't say anything because they don't have enough political cover. Once they get enough of them in there, in Congress, then they will begin to, others who have the same radical ideas will begin to chirp up. Hey, you know what? I actually do believe that we should no longer have allies status with Israel. And that's how they change things. So that's why it's of a concern to us that these 3 are out there saying these things. And I don't care that they had a resolution in Congress or that Nancy Pelosi said she shouldn't say those things. Forget about what they're saying. Have they stripped her of any committee appointments? No. That means they don't really care. That's the music. Thank you for being here today. God bless you from the Heartland. Citizens, I will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great evening.